Welcome to Secure Your Future. Don't let the latest mobile security threats and misconceptions cost you webinar. Organizations and employees are increasingly depending on mobile devices as organizations balance with hybrid and remote work. Whether an organization offers a mobile device to its employees or offers a formal BYO or bring your own device offering, chances are many employees are accessing sensitive work data and business applications on a device with little or no security oversight from IT. In fact, according to a survey of mobile security professionals in the Mobile Security Index of 2022 report published by Verizon, 53% of respondents said that mobile devices have access to more sensitive data than a year ago. 58% said that they have more users using mobile devices than 12 months ago, and 59% said mobile users are doing more with devices than they did a year ago as well. The Verizon report also stated many employees now have access to much of the same data, like customer lists, banking details, employees' personal data, billing information, and systems like messaging and enterprise resource planning systems via their mobile devices as they would sitting at a traditional desktop in the office. Such an increase in mobile device usage for work means mobile devices are more attractive targets now and are increased risk for organization security postures. Each mobile device extends the organization's perimeter and can be a weak link in that organization's security. And yet mobile has continued to be overlooked until now. Now is the time to secure your mobile fleet. I am so happy to be joined today by JJ Manella, founder of Vision Security and co-host of Tech Strong Podcast, Famida Rashid, managing editor at Dark Reading, and Jaron Bradley from our own Jamf Threat Labs. We want to discuss how we can all approach security for our mobile fleets. So I'll start off with a question for Famida. You're the managing editor over at Dark Reading, one of our customers' favorite publications to get breaking security news and knowledge. Tell us about some of the biggest mobile security stories or trends that you've seen this year.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for having me here. But the thing that we've noticed with our mobile coverage is so much stuff has stayed the same. There's still malicious apps, there's still Trojans, and all of these. But what's been the striking thing for us is this new class of sophisticated software or malicious apps attack methods that are invisible. So you're using your phone and you don't realize that your phone is actually working against you. And we're seeing so many of that, every single time we have an iOS bug basically being like, oh, you don't even need to make a phone call and someone is able to compromise your phone. Update your iOS device right now. So we're just seeing more and more of these. And we're realizing, to what you were saying earlier, that mobile really has become an attractive attack surface where there are zero-day vulnerabilities being used, there are new techniques being used where attackers are trying really hard to act on the device in a way that you don't realize is transparent. The Amnesty International has been doing a lot of great work on the predator spyware. And a lot of those techniques are the ones they're talking about, where they're going to be intercepting your HTTPS connection. They are trying to eavesdrop on your conversation just by making sure you have a specific image on your file. And these subtle, stealthy attacks have kind of moved away from being, oh yeah, it happened only if you're a very, very high target, and it's become a little bit more pervasive. We were talking earlier about the whole fake airplane mode attack, where all of us expect our phone to act a certain way. And then when you're suddenly tricked into doing something, you still think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be putting your phone offline so that you're not on the network. And realizing that wanting to do the right thing, wanting to use the phone for communication is being used against you. I think a huge trend we're noticing.
Thank you, Famida. And then on the topic of fake airplane mode, then Jaron, you're part of our groundbreaking Jamf Threat Labs team here, and the ones that were behind the research around fake airplane mode, plus many more during this big year of novel threat discoveries from that team, of course. So can you tell us a little bit more about Jamf Threat Labs and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I myself have a background in computer security. I've spent a fair bit of my professional career focusing on detecting and responding to cyber attacks against various organizations. So here at Jamf Threat Labs, we focus heavily on protecting Apple devices as well as monitoring the threat landscape for attackers who are kind of shifting their focus towards the Apple ecosystem as well. So the team focuses on all Apple platforms, including mobile, and props to the Mobile Threat Labs team for some of the research released this year. For example, the aforementioned fake airplane mode was a very interesting write-up that focused on basically an attack technique that could potentially be used on an exploited or jailbroken device. We kind of demonstrated how an attacker could potentially set up this fake airplane mode that might trick a user into thinking they're completely disconnected, when in reality, a compromised phone could remain connected to the internet and therefore kind of remain connected to an attacker, right? Outside of this, the team also does a lot of focus on really low-level vulnerability analysis and discovery. If you want to look up some of those reference items, cold intro and cold invites are two major items we kind of released in research this year. In the past, we've also done a lot of research around the application space at Threat Labs, right? For example, the team surveyed many different applications that exist to get the percentages of permissions that those apps were requesting. And some of the stats turned out to be pretty surprising, I think. So, for example, of the applications in the food and drink category, right, 60% of them request access to Bluetooth devices, which is just kind of a question mark on why 60% of them in that category might require that. Something I also think is strange, a much smaller number, but 1% of finance applications requesting access to health data stored on your phone. It's also very strange. Why would a finance-based application need access to the health data that you have recorded about yourself on your phone, right? Threat Labs also does a lot of tracking around phishing as well. We released a report a while back regarding like 1 in 10 people from their mobile device will click on a phishing link, and the number of mobile users falling for phishing attacks has increased by 160% year over year. And then finally, 93% of phishing domains are using HTTPS now, which there's a bit of a false sense of security on what that actually means. So really, that's a roundabout way of saying the Threat Labs team here at Jamf focuses on all types of research across mobile in hopes that the information we share helps users better understand and protect their environment.
Sharon, thank you for sharing a bit more about the Jamf Threat Labs for us. I know that we do hear from our customers a lot about mobile security issues, including how they can manage and secure their devices and how to really get their arms around mobile devices accessing company resources really from anywhere now, and how best to get visibility into the mobile fleet with their existing technology stack, existing architecture, and really balancing the barriers between the experience that IT wants to put out there and then what security teams deem as the standards that they need to meet. JJ, you run an IT and security consulting business, along with being the co-host of the TechStrong podcast. Can you tell us about some of the top problems your customers come to you to solve for them too?
Yeah, well, I think you guys have hit the main issues there, which is the visibility piece. I think that's number one, because whether it's the operations team on the networking side or the security team, the mobile devices tend to just sort of get forgotten. It's almost like, well, if we walk around like this, we can pretend like they're not there and they're not.
Pretend they don't exist, right?
Yeah. It's like suddenly that protect surface and that attack surface is just like somebody else's problem somehow. So visibility is a huge thing. And I think that the visibility and the control piece together, and then that sort of combines into how to enforce best practices and meet some compliance requirements. And the visibility standpoint is just a little bit crazy to me, because I think from like a laptop perspective, I think we've figured that out pretty well. Everybody's got some agents or stack of agents they can push out, especially in the Windows world. But when we get into things that aren't in our domain infrastructure, which a lot of that is Apple coming up in the enterprise space, along with a little bit of Chromebook here and there, and the iPads, which are prevalent pretty much in any business environment, and the iPhones, we just don't have the visibility. And the answer has been, okay, we'll install MDM, mobile device management, but that's very dependent on the endpoint that it's on. And those tools were not meant for security. They were meant to push a certain amount of limited configuration to the endpoint. So the visibility, the security control, and then we're trying to solve the problem. I probably handle at least 1 or 2 calls a week around the strategy for BYOD or managing a corporate fleet that's done in the domain. And we talk about mobile application management versus mobile device management. And all of the security professionals are saying, oh, well, just do MAM, just do application management, problem solved. And that's great. But, in theory, it's wonderful because they're putting the control around the actual data or the application. But unless you're in an ecosystem where you're only using applications that fit into that model, and frankly, out of thousands of clients I work with, 0 of them work 100% in an environment like that. We can't use MAM. We have to do something with the devices if we're going to be putting corporate data on it, to it, or through it.
Thank you so much, JJ, for that. Jaren, how do mobile security threats differ from the traditional threats that Mac and PCs face? So why do some organizations then not prioritize or view mobile security in the same way that they do for their traditional desktops?
Yeah, that's there's actually probably a lot of answers to that question. I'll focus on the ones that I think are maybe some of the more obvious and frequent. So first, how do the threats differ? At their core foundation, they don't differ a whole lot. Many of the things you worry about on your computer, you have to worry about in the exact same manner on your phone. For example, right, phishing. Phishing's primary goal is to get information from you, whether that be personal information, credit card information, or login credentials, right? This can be done just as easily from your phone as it can from your laptop. It's literally, there's no difference. And in fact, like on our phones, like we might even be less likely, due to the small screen, less likely to notice that a website seems a little off and maybe is still, trying to pull something quick on us, right? From the malware perspective, the threats do differ just a little bit. Malware definitely still exists for mobile phones, but it does tend to be mostly the highly advanced attackers that can pull this type of attack off, right? So due to a pretty secure design of the mobile operating systems, it's very difficult to compromise the phone unless you have an in-depth skill set and a large amount of time and maybe a lot of money backing all that up, right? And I think this feeds into kind of your next question: why do some organizations not prioritize mobile? And I think the answer could be a lot of companies ignore the threat of phishing and different social engineering based attacks. And then B, they feel comfortable, playing the odds that they're not going to be one of the targets of these highly advanced attackers. And in reality, detecting threats on mobile devices is one of those things that if you're not actively looking, the odds of ever knowing it happened are going to be pretty slim.
I would agree there very much. And if I were a betting woman, that's not something that I would bet upon. Okay, so we talked a lot about existing mobile security threats today and what we're seeing today. But Famita, what are some of the mobile security trends and threats that you expect to continue to see into the new year, and maybe even some that are on the horizon that you think will become a little bit more of a trend in addition to what we just talked about?
Sure. I think to Joan's point, phishing, they're the reason phishing's around. So that's not going away. We're going to see more of that. We're going to see more phishing attacks on all the communication platform. People are moving into encrypted chat. They're using different types of apps to communicate. And I think we're going to see more phishing attacks targeting those. We're going to see people on Telegram suddenly being like, hey, wait, why am I getting these? I didn't used to get them before. We're going to see various attacks. I mean, I think it was even just a couple of weeks ago when there was all this news that there might be a 0-day vulnerability in Signal. And a lot of people in my circles all freaked out thinking, wait, there's a bug in Signal. I use Signal for everything. So we're just going to see more and more attacks and phishing, just not even fancy ones, but we're talking like basic phishing, basic social engineering attacks hitting communication platforms on mobile. So that's definitely one. Um, I can say with certainty that Dark Reading will be covering those stories next year. Another one that I think is something that we are not talking as much, and I'd definitely like to see more attention paid for, is with all of these industries, all these countries beginning to roll out 5G, we are beginning to realize that, hey, 5G is its own network. It's got its own criteria. It's got its own requirement. Deployment is happening in some places in spurts. Some countries are further along on their 5G journey than the others. Even the United States, some regions, some carriers are better and further along than others. So when you have a mix of networks, when you have mix of technologies and the carriers are not all in the same place, that is going to be an area, even though 5G is supposed to be considered more secure and has a lot of protections in there, the fact that it's not happening everybody at the same time, we're going to see a lot of attacks where you're going to see spoofing, you're going to see attacks against the carriers because they're in a state of transition. So 5G as a whole is an area that I'm a little concerned about, that I'm not sure if there's enough work being done even on the security side where enterprises are they thinking, hey, what's happening with 5G networks? Is our fleet, do we have visibility on our devices that are 5G capable? So I think there are just a lot of different questions we're not asking specifically when it comes to 5G.
Yeah, that last point is very important because a lot of this and what we're contending with is trying to support this all as we're reckoning with, what this truly means to be hybrid and remote work, right? So our employees, our team members are traversing the globes with these devices going from network to network. So that's a very good point that you brought up there, Famita. Thank you for that. Okay, so to round us out, I would like to ask each of you to offer up for our viewers and listeners your top 1 to 2 practical tips and actionable steps that they can take with their organizations to enhance their mobile security posture and really secure their future effectively. Maybe we can start with JJ.
Sure. Yeah. I think the first thing is to realize that the access model has flipped. So I think we tend to think of, the computers and servers and laptops and maybe starting to get into mobile devices is where the meat and the juices, and those are our kind of crown jewels for an endpoint. And then the smartphones and the tablets were the things that were floating around that had a little bit of access, right? I could get email, could look at my calendar. But now, really, we have all of the same threat and risk on a full corporate device with a normal operating system as part of our domain infrastructure, floating out around in hands and in cars and at ball stadiums. And usually this is also our second factor for authentication. So the access model and the criticality and the sensitivity has shifted from these things that were inside of a perimeter to now things that are outside of the perimeter, and where we don't even really have a perimeter. And so that visibility piece, I think, is going to be critical to know what devices are accessing your data and your applications, how, and then to get into the actual threat detection and response for these different mobile endpoints.
Great. Thank you so much, JJ. Famita?
I think from my perspective, it's actually going very, very basic, right to the device level. From whether you're an administrator managing a fleet of mobile devices or you're an end user because you're just using your phone for work, like we should definitely be thinking about the basic screen lock. Make sure that someone can't just pick up your phone and do something. I think a lot of people sort of underestimate just how easy it is for someone to walk off with your phone or take your phone and do something with it. And it's always the same thing, right? Have a lock, have a protection, slow the person down, make it not worth the effort to try to get your screen locked, to get into your phone, to get your data, your company data. So having a screen lock, fingerprint if you can, Face ID if you have to, but at least from an administrative standpoint, it should no longer be optional. I don't think we're at a point where any organization, big or small, schools or anything like that, can afford to say, oh yeah, don't worry about screen locks. Like, I think that definitely has to be mandatory. And to kind of connecting that entire concept of we don't want data in the wrong hands, especially when you lose it, there should definitely be some attention paid on how do you make sure you can remote wipe your device, whether that's through an admin portal and you have control over it using MDM, or I mean, even Android. So I'm an Android user, so I don't know a lot about iOS, but I assume iOS has an equivalent. Android lets you say, hey, here are the phones, and I have the ability to lock it, I have the ability to wipe it. And I think these two should just be part of any organization thinking about what do we do if this device is no longer in our employees' control.
And Lynn,
Great.
if I can jump in with what Famita said, because that was really impactful. I like that. The other thing that we're not even broaching on this conversation, because it could be its own webinar, is all of the legal aspects around a user running around with access to corporate data on a phone. So everything from e-discovery to labor laws, it's a bizarre combination of different layers of compliance regulations and regional laws that vary by state sometimes.
The regional piece of it too, right? By state, by country, as well as our global footprint for many of for ourselves at Jamf, but for a lot of our customers is continuing to expand every day. Absolutely. Great point. Yes. And then Jaron, last but not least.
Yeah, honestly, I'd say go to our website and check out the Jamf Mobile Security Health Check. Basically, you can enroll a bunch of devices for 30 days, and we'll kind of we'll present you with our findings and kind of a document towards the end of that, and show you what we're capable of, just in terms of helping you keep your environment safe from a mobile perspective.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today, giving us some time and sharing their expert knowledge. And thank you to everyone joining us today. As we've delved into the intricate landscape of mobile security, I'd like to leave you with 3 key takeaways to fortify your understanding and defense against mobile threats, in addition to the expert feedback and tips that you just heard from our panelists. So first off, stay updated and informed by accessing our Jamf Threat Labs research. Our team's cutting edge work is instrumental in navigating the evolving mobile security landscape. And I encourage you to visit jamf.com/threatlabs and explore our latest blog posts where we share crucial insights and analysis. Secondly, equip yourself with some proof point reports. Our 360 report is a comprehensive resource that offers invaluable insights into both Mac and mobile security trends. You can download the current report and stay tuned for the upcoming 2024 edition as well, which promises to unveil new and vital information. And finally, as Jaron mentioned, take the initiative to sign up for the Jamf Mobile Security Health Check trial. You can experience firsthand the robust security capabilities offered by Jamf Protect for the mobile device. Test and validate the power of securing your mobile fleet with Jamf to ensure a resilient and protected future. And by taking some of these actions and also taking in the feedback from our experts, you can empower yourself and your organizations to proactively defend against the ever-evolving threats in the mobile security landscape. And remember, securing your future begins with informed decisions and proactive measures. So thank you once again for being a part of this crucial conversation. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay secure. Thank you, everyone.